Hey, real quick, just want to say, as you watch this video today, you might be weirded out as to why the audio sounds good in some parts based on my ability to read the script, and some parts it sounds awful, and that is because in the middle of production of this video and of the top 10 best video games of 2021, I got hit with COVID-19, and it has drastically shaped everything. I'm doing okay, but thank you for watching, and enjoy the video.
How long has he been like this?
He's been like this for hours.
I don't want to do it.
Buddy, you gotta.
I don't want to talk about the worst things of 2021.
Come on, dude.
No!
You gotta.
No! You all want to see me suffer. No!
2021 was an extension of the pandemic where a bunch of games were expected to come out but were delayed for obvious reasons. While that did mean a decline in overall games, it also meant a massive decline in truly terrible games. And even still, 2021 did bring in a fair amount of rot. Gaming space is far from perfect both in terms of products and practices. So let's get into them. These are the worst things to happen in gaming this year in 2021.
Number 6.
Make no mistake, folks, this is still a crazy game. So last year, my worst game was finding a PS5 and or an Xbox Series X or S because of the massive issues we all faced while trying to own one of these consoles. We all encountered consoles that simply weren't in stock, they were stolen, being scalped, or just disappeared off the face of this earth. But this year, I'm glad to say that the issue is no longer a problem. I am full of shit. This is still a problem. People are still trying to get their hands on one or more of these, but have mostly been able to do so. That's because there is still a massive shortage of materials needed to manufacture these products. And this is due to the lack of raw materials, labor shortages, logistical issues caused by global lockdowns, and trade issues with other countries. Now, I'm not going to go into this because frankly, that's not my area of expertise. All of my political knowledge mainly lies in making jokes about Senator Donkey Kong and his awesome red tie. That being said, I do understand why there is a shortage. Things were crazy last year and things are crazy this year again, but that doesn't change the fact how much people want these freaking consoles, which makes sense because the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and S are really good. They're incredible. And now that shortages is finally coming over to the newer models of the Nintendo Switch OLED and even just the regular Nintendo Switch as well. But there does seem to be a light at the end of this dark consumerist tunnel. Experts predict that the chip shortage should come to an end in 2022. So next year, you'll not have to have me go on this same rant again. At least I hope so.
Number 5.
The tabletop game Dungeons and Dragons is a ton of fun. The world building, camaraderie, and sense of exploration make for a truly unique gaming experience. Unfortunately, I didn't really get any of this out of the final product that is Dungeons and Dragons Dark Alliance. This is a shame because you can tell there was a lot of love put into this game. There are so many intricate details put into Dark Alliance that hardcore fans of D&D would love, like the leveling system, mirroring an actual D&D character sheet in that way, and spells having bonus damage and cast times being akin to how they are within 5th edition of D&D. But having amazing details for the most hardcore fans doesn't necessarily ensure a good game. Overall, Dark Alliance felt very generic, linear, and largely repetitive, and that repetition quickly led to boredom. There were numerous gameplay issues, especially when it came to hit detection, and hit detection is particularly important when you're playing a hack and slash style action RPG, resulting in some lackluster combat and an overall unfun experience intended to be shared with friends. And I'm sure at this point a lot of those bugs and issues I talked about have been fixed over time, but that's still an issue that's probably there to an extent. But there's more to the story here for me than you guys actually know. As I'm sure you're all aware, the YouTube climate isn't the best in terms of revenue in the last several years. So from time to time, we, and I mean the company, take big brand deals. Some of them are great. You roll the dice and hope for the best. Shoutouts to G Fuel. Others, like this year, are Dungeons and Dragons Dark Alliance. Okay, maybe I'm being a little unfair, but Wizards of the Coast approached us to make 2 videos on Dark Alliance, and while things started out great, the grass quickly looked greener elsewhere. The first video we did was I interviewed the game director Jeff Haddam, which was delightful, and the second part of the deal was to do a gameplay video. And for you hardcore fans out there for the show, you may have realized that I only released one of these videos because the second one was supposed to be that gameplay video, and that's where things fell apart. I didn't want to put out a video where I didn't feel like I could freely speak my mind. And to the credit of Wizards of the Coast, they said I could have said whatever I wanted and not have worried about the implications. And while there are a lot of fun elements in Dark Alliance, the negatives of the online space were just too glaring to admit mention of. And I already felt bad about punching down on the developers who were already in the middle of a gigantic PR storm. Ultimately, this meant that I ended up turning down that second part of the deal. And if I can be fully transparent, it was a lot of money that we had to say no to, which adds an extra bit of sourness to this game for me and the team. Sorry, Pat. It looks like you can't go to space camp this year after all.
Number 4.
So there were a lot of incredible indie titles that came out this year. However, none got more attention than 12 Minutes due to its all-star cast and widely varied critiques saying the game was either fantastic or just flat out awful. So where do I stand? I mean, you kind of have an idea of what this is because of the list on this video. So here we go. 12 Minutes starts off fairly interesting. You come home from work, have dinner with your wife, she reveals she's pregnant, and then a mysterious man attacks the two of you in your home. You're suddenly brought back to the very beginning of those 12 minutes, and you have to figure out why this is all happening. So yeah, this is awesome because it's a time loop game, and I love this. Conceptually, I think 12 Minutes presents the player with a lot of great stuff, and the performances give a lot of the appropriate weight, especially Willem Dafoe as the mysterious man. But the gameplay paired with some of the narrative choices required of you swerve from dull trial and error and exploration to significantly more morally questionable territory when you have to drug your wife and torture the man with his own knife. These are all awful and feel even worse when you have to do it repeatedly to get something you may have missed in the process. And they're all various alternate story paths you need to follow in order to get certain achievements, including letting the man murder your wife with you just watching or even helping him do it. So then that makes you go, well, I don't know what to do. So then you just shoot your wife to see if that does anything. But no, that doesn't do anything. You're just a bad man who murdered his wife for no freaking reason. All of this is building to a big twist at the end that frankly is really stupid. It doesn't affect the story at all. It just makes everything feel very gross. In fact, that's how I describe my overall reaction to this game. I feel gross. I originally wanted to complete this game for the show, but with everything going on in the world, I just couldn't bring myself to have to repeatedly play a game that makes me feel awful and like genuinely awful. And if you enjoyed this game, then I am very happy for you. But for me, it ended up being a hard pass.
Number 3.
So 2021 has featured a ton of remasters and remakes, and I get why. It's a great way to introduce classic games or stories to modern systems and new fans. Or if you're not going to release a new sequel to your most hotly anticipated IP, you might as well pump the franchise a little more with the cheap and rush remastered, right? Usually speaking, when it comes to remasters and remakes, I don't like to put them on lists like this. I like to leave it just for new games only. However, this remaster ended up being so bad that I had to put it on this list. Grand Theft Auto, the Trilogy, the Definitive Edition. God, what a mouthful. This edition is anything but definitive. While the game seems to play largely the same as the original games, it somehow manages to look like total glossy garbage. Every character is oddly smooth, like a worn out Stretch Armstrong. Look at Carl from San Andreas. What did they do to him? It's like a weird Sims mod that went wrong. But it's not just the character designs either. Everything looks awful. There are frame rate issues, oddly blurry visuals, a ton of pop-in, and even more glitches. There were a ton of missions where I would have to pause the game multiple times to adjust the brightness. Although the music and sound are some of the highlights of a GTA game, many of the original tracks were cut from the game completely due to licensing, and the ones they kept would cut in and out without notice. And I hate to say this, but this is absolutely inexcusable for games that originally came out 17 years ago and look better. And maybe I would excuse some of these things coming from the Nintendo Switch build, except everything I'm describing I experienced on a PS5, and the Switch version was even worse. Seriously, these games are classics that genuinely shaped video games as we know them, and this definitive edition has done them more than dirty. They deserve a lot better. At the very least, there is a positive to all of this. We have been working on a Grand Theft Auto San Andreas video for several years. When this definitive edition came out, we got nervous that we had to start over our playthrough. Thankfully, this game was so bad that we're sticking with the PS4 port, and that video should be out in a couple of weeks to maybe a month.
Number 2.
Whenever you make a creative work, even though you have all the best components, there is a chance that you can make something truly terrible. Like, even though Taco Bell's always using the same ingredients, sometimes you get a cheesy gordita crunch, and other times you get a cheesy roll-up. This is also true about games, and especially true about Balan Wonderworld. So here's the thing, I had such high hopes for this game. It was going to reunite the creators of Sonic the Hedgehog, Yuji Naka, and designer Naito Oshima, and they'd be creating a 3D action platform, which is my favorite genre of all time. Add on Square Enix to the mix, and this should have been a match made in heaven. That was far from the case. And first of all, I keep getting the title wrong because I want to say land instead of world, since, you know, it sounds better. But that's more of a frustration than something truly bad. What makes Balan Wonderland, world really frustrating is actually playing it. Every action in Balan Wonderland is attributed to one button. What action you execute depends on the costume you're wearing. If you want to flutter jump, get the costume that makes you flutter jump. If you want to ground pound, then get the costume that makes you ground pound, etc. That's all you can do though. You do get 3 costumes that you can change into at a time, and if one of them can't jump, you can't jump either. This is simply baffling game design. One strange design choice after another. Lots of unnecessary backtracking, absolutely insane cutscenes that feel out of a fever dream. It is very nearly the Cats of the video game world. And overall, the game feels like a chore instead of a game to play. I have heard actually that the completion bonus is worth it if you dig this game. Unfortunately for me, I just didn't want to get through it. If you guys want me to complete it, let me know in the comments. I thought about doing it when it came up, but I also took the balance games that I really want to cover because I know you guys want to see it versus, oh, look, a new Five Nights at Freddy's. I should talk about that because views.
Number 1.
So this list for the most part has been fun to make. However, this final item isn't something that can be made fun of. And I don't usually like to do any kind of political speech or picking a side. And honestly, this to me though isn't about politics or what side of the spectrum you kind of appear on when it comes to social inequality in the world. But I think what it comes down to is people. You take care of people. You should take care of everyone in your life. You should want those to be taken care of. Your friends, your family, your loved ones. So undoubtedly the worst game, and it is a game for many out there who are actually in the system, but it's a harsh reality, is that the worst game of the year isn't really a game, but really a situation. And that situation is what's going on at Activision Blizzard. Now, look, I'm not a hard-hitting journalist, but I would like to think that I'm someone with a pretty strong moral compass. Crunch is bad. People should be paid. You shouldn't be sexually harassing your coworkers at work. And if you see any of this happening where you work, you should be calling it out, and HR should be actively doing something about it. The unfortunate truth is that Activision Blizzard opted to bury all of this for so long, or that it was something of a industry secret, and that in itself feels gross, particularly because I truly do love games like Diablo 2 and Overwatch. But I hate that if I am playing those games, then I am theoretically supporting a fractured culture of some very talented artists and developers out there. The reality is, in the mix of those people are some real genuine assholes. Again, I normally don't speak out about these things. I want to focus on games and the joy that they bring, not the awful things that's happening behind the scenes. But I think I can safely say that I speak for lots of people, especially since I became a host for G4. It feels so wrong to not say something about this. And worth mentioning, this is an industry-wide problem. Although I am talking about Activision Blizzard right now, we've seen stories and allegations all across several companies for several years, from Riot Games, Ubisoft, even more recently with Metroid Dread's Mercury Steam mistreating workers. Here's hoping that public pressure and a spotlight on the specifics will lead to some positive and lasting changes. What they have done or not done or let go on is atrocious. These gaming companies owe more to their employees as well as the gaming public as a whole. This list may not have 10 items on here, but what's happened here is awful enough to make up for the missing pieces that would normally go on this list. So it's no question that really game development culture is the worst thing to take place in 2021. And here's the thing, it didn't just happen in 2021, it's been happening for several years. I'm sorry if they made all of you mad. You know what? I'm not sorry if they made all of you mad. You should be mad. If you're mad at me, well then you're mad at me. Escapism is one thing, but that doesn't change the fact that something has to change.
I know this is a massive letdown and a massive note to end this video on, but I feel like it's really important to talk about this problem at large. You can do some research, read about what's going on. And to be clear, this is not a political issue. This is not what color or what race or what gender you are. This is a systematic problem that is constantly being passed up on. And it's important that we take time to recognize our problems, learn from our mistakes, and support those who need the support. And for those of you wanting something a bit more chipper, you can check out my top 10 video of the best games of 2021 right here. And there's a lot more positivity there, trust me. Hey, have a great new year. I'll see you guys around. Bye.